Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the American government and the future of print. All right, so let's talk about the current state of print, what the state of print should be, and then what the American government should do to get American print where it should be. All right. Oh, and I should say, I mean American print, right? What do I mean? Well, so one, I mean only books that are printed in America. That's what I'm talking about when I say American print. I mean books that are printed in America, okay? So, you know, there are, of course, you know, it's a global world, like we got multiple countries, but everything I'm talking about right now is specific to America, and when I say American print, I mean books printed in America. All right, so let's talk about the state of print. So one, print is massively on the ropes. Print is very much dying, okay? And what I mean by that is, so one, there's only like one book chain in the whole country now, and that is Barnes & Noble. They're the only one, they're the only place that has brick and mortars across the 50 states anymore. There used to be Borders. I miss Borders. Actually, Barnes & Noble was definitely the better bookstore. The better bookstore the better bookstore won, in that I find that Barnes & Noble, I don't think either Barnes, so I'm a long-time customer of Borders, which has been out of business for a decade. But I'm a long-time customer of Borders, and I'm a long-time customer of Barnes & Noble. And I don't think either one of them had good customer service. That's just not something you're going to find in any bookstore chain. Unfortunately, I found that, like, most of the time, when I would ask for help finding a book, the people either didn't know anything about the books that I was talking about, or were very dismissive of the books that I was looking for. And, you know, I don't like you throwing shade about the books I read. Like, and the books I was asking for was always the same thing: science fiction novels, comic book graphic novels, and tabletop role-playing games. And I would say, like, 1/3 of the time, somebody would throw shade and kind of like give a snide look or a snide comment about the books I wanted to read. And then 1/3 of the time, the people didn't know where the books were, and that only happened with role-playing games. That, you know, all the bookstore people knew where the comic book graphic novels were and where the science fiction section was. But the problem is, when I would say tabletop role-playing games, many of them would think I was talking about video games, and they didn't even understand that, hey, you know, tabletop role-playing games is different than a video game, and it was a whole thing. So, you know, print in America is really on the ropes, right? So only Barnes & Noble is the only real bookstore chain that's left. There's still a few independent bookstores, but they're very few and far between. I think if you're a big city like if you're a big city like New York or Miami or Los Angeles, you can. I think a big city can keep an actual independent bookstore. I would say you can have one bookstore per million people who live in that city, right? And so that means all across the country where there are big cities, there are independent bookstores. That's good. But this is an industry that used to be huge, and now it's absolutely minimal, right? And I really feel that the government should step in and give a guiding hand for what should happen with print. And so this is the model that I would like to see the government guide American industry toward. And I am very much for the American government making decisions that will help the American people, and then using tax, policy, and highlight to guide the American American industry in the right way, okay? And for something as critical as print, I think this is a perfect area for the government to butt in, right? And give us some direction, some solid, useful, good direction, okay? So what is the direction? And by the way, I would put how the government butts in the following way: highlight first, policy second, and taxes last, okay? And frankly, if you never have to use taxes to guide the American industry or the American people, that's best, right? You should really use highlight first, policy second, and taxes you should avoid ever using, okay? If you got to use it, you got to use it. You know, guide the people, right? We hire smart, brilliant, noble. We vote for, we elect brilliant, charismatic, noble people. That's the model we're all shooting for. Unfortunately, I think the blue power base and the red power base are making that more and more difficult, right? But that's who we want to lead. And when we get them in there, we want them to guide, right? And I think print is a great place for the American government to guide, okay? So how should the American government guide, right? Well, I'll give it to you. When it comes to American print, right? And by the way, what do I mean by highlight? Highlight is when the American president says, I think that American industry should do this, right? Says it publicly, uses the press to get an idea out there, also invites leaders of industries, key players in key industries, to come to the White House to talk. Once that happens, once a key player in a key industry is invited to the White House to talk, that becomes a public conversation that the president has had. And there's actually structure around that, right? So the press is informed, and nobody comes to the White House secretly. You can't. It's almost impossible, right? And so once they come, there's a conversation that actually happens, and the president can guide an industry by what they say to key players in that industry, right? Almost no one in America, I don't think anyone in America, no one in America ignores the president, period, right? Even if you say, oh, I'm not coming to see you, you're still acknowledging the request, right? And the reality is nobody ignores the president, right? Now, people can say no, but no one just won't even talk to the president. Even with Trump, right? People will make a point of, I'm not going to see him, right? And that's interacting with the president, right? And I think a lot of times the president knows that these people aren't going to come, and he does it to get points off of his base. And frankly, the blues are so untactical, unstrategic compared to the reds that often I think Trump gains a lot of points just by people saying no to his invitations. I don't think the blues even have an idea that that's what's happening, right? The blues are way behind on tactics and strategies compared to the reds in America. By the way, red Republican, blue Democrat, just in case anybody out there is still learning those terms. That's okay if you are, right? So you got that, right? So now I've explained highlighting. What should the U.S. government, what should the U.S. president do to guide print? And by the way, if you are one of these people who believes that the president can't do anything or doesn't do much, you better wake up, right? The president is massively powerful, right? For one, the president has already mastered their party, right? They come in with the goodwill of the party, and they can use the party to lean on people. That's massively powerful, right? The president can accomplish things literally with a conversation, right? So the idea that the president doesn't do much is absurd. And if you are still hanging on to that old, old spouse tale, you better let it go, because it's ridiculous, right? The power, Kennedy got us to the moon in 6 years. Are you kidding me? Like, presidents are powerful. Okay? Do not be persuaded that they're not. Okay? So what does the president do when it comes to American print? All right, so first of all, current state print is in a lot of trouble because it's scattered and confused. Okay? What is the scattered and confusedness of the current American print, right? Well, for one, we're still printing regular books, and that's stupid. That is really stupid, right? So let me pick a better word. That lacks wisdom. There you go. Okay. We should no longer print any of these nonsense books where it is a cover and then 200 or 300 pages with black text on white pages. That is an absolute waste. Okay? First of all, Kindles cost nothing, virtually nothing. They're very, very cheap, right? Even if any book fan, you're going to buy a Kindle, okay? And the reason why is they're massively good. They're really, really good, right? If you read traditional old school nonsense books, like cover, 300 pages of black print, black type, words on white paper. There's no sense in printing any of that nonsense anymore, right? Kindle will do that fine, all right? So what books should be printed? Illustrated books, okay? So first of all, textbooks. Textbooks are legit. There's a good reason to print them, okay? One, they have illustrations, right? And these books, these are incredibly well-crafted books where you have to get an artist to depict incredibly complex ideas to use visual data to communicate a concept. Textbooks should be printed. I'm a firm believer of this, right? This is fine, and this is good, right? And the reason why is you're taking a body of knowledge, you're condensing it, and you're putting it into a book, and that thing can stay with somebody for 50 years. And there's a reason to print it because, one, they're large. Two, they use both typed print, they use layout, and they use art. And that's the point. If your book does not use layout well, does not use typeset well, typed words, and does not use art, okay, your book shouldn't exist, in my opinion, period. And yes, that means I don't think photography books should be a thing either, right? Just look at that stuff on a screen. But I truly believe that anything that uses good layout, good art, and good typeset should be printed. So what should be printed? Textbooks should be printed. Sacred texts should be printed. Comic books should be printed. And ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner, tabletop role-playing games should be printed. That's Dungeons & Dragons and 1,000 other great tabletop role-playing games. Why do I feel so strongly about tabletop role-playing games? Well, one, they're some of the coolest books on the planet right now, okay? And they do all of this. They use layout, they use type, they use typeset, and they use art, okay? Not photography. Photography is no longer art. Yep, come at me, whatever. It's just too ubiquitous. It's too much of a commodity. And if you're some, like, frou-frou, artist photographer, nobody cares about your, like, curated nonsense pictures that come out 6 months after 50 other people have already shared pictures of this through their phone, right? Like, photography is a commodity. It is no longer an art. It's like saying bologna is an art, right? Bologna is a commodity. It's used, it's consumed, it has a purpose, and anybody can do it, right? Photography is no longer an art. Art is art. Visual artistry. I'm talking pencils, inks, paints, acrylics, the whole nine, right? Photography is no longer art, right? All right, yeah, no, that's in here. Like, come at me. You know where the comments are. All right, so basically, that's what should be printed right now, right? And I think now, why should these be printed? Because anybody can come back at me and say, hey, Scott, those, you could look at those on the screen. No, you cannot, right? So one, there's a tradition with these, right? So one, these books, they are really useful and valuable. And one of the things is there's still value in drawing together a community. A community of what, right? Thinkers, collectors, right? And passionate body of knowledge adherents, right? So tabletop role-playing games have a powerful community, right? And it is just cram-filled with brilliant, awesome, amazing thinkers, right? Sage Latour, Adam Cobell, Luke Crane, Anna Creeder. There's just a ton, right? And these people are brilliant. They would have succeeded in any field they went into, and there are communities that gather around them. And these books are relics. They are powerful relics, right? They contain magic, and they bind people together, okay? The same happens in comic books. The same happens in academia, right? That's why textbooks. And certainly the same happens around sacred texts. Books are an element of community, right? And once you love books, you share them and you pass them along. You pass them down to your ancestors. You pass them sideways to your friends. You give them as insults to your rivals. Books are necessary and powerful, and they bind communities. And the American government should forge a powerful American print industry today, which exists of only books that have art, layout, and text, right? It takes real design, real passion and real fortitude to create something like that, there's no need for a typeset 300-page book that has no pictures anymore. Throw those in the trash, burn them, whatever you want to do. There's no reason to keep them anymore, right? Like, it's not needed. You can read it all on a Kindle, right? It's not useful, okay? But these other books are incredibly powerful. They are needed as point-in-time pictures of a body of knowledge that can be passed from person to person. Also, there is a collectible industry around them, and I think that is really, really important. I am okay with people collecting old typeset books that don't have pictures. Oh, and by the way, if you want your novel to get printed, I got no problem with that, right? But you better get an artist up in there, and there better be a full plate picture every 10 pages, right? Don't print nonsense without art and layout. It doesn't make any sense, right? But books that have art, layout, and text, they're worth print. And I think there should be a robust American print industry. And trust and believe, everybody who is getting and keeping and buying and passing books, those are your world killers, right? Those are your apex predators of the knowledge world, right? Those are the people who will rule. Those are the people who matter, right? The most when it comes to this person needs no help. They are a conqueror. There are still some left. We need them in America. And books bind them together as communities, right? The binding isn't being done on the books. Books bind. And that's why the U.S. president, whoever is the next U.S. president, whether that's Oprah Winfrey or Andrew Yang or maybe The Rock, who knows, right? I certainly hope neither one of the presumptive nominees from the Republican or the Democrats, hopefully something's going to happen so that the choices that we look like we're going to have in November are not the choices. I'm very much hoping that the presumptive nominees are off the slate for good, safe reasons that do not harm them in any way, but I am definitely hoping that they have some type of political fallout that takes them off the books, because I am so worried about what I'm going to actually vote for in June. It is not good, right? These are just terrible, terrible choices, right? But whoever the next president is, I would like them to highlight and call in the industry heads and say, stop printing books without layout and art. It should be text, layout, and art. And then also, if that doesn't work, what I would do is remove taxes altogether from anybody who wants to buy, sell, or make books. No taxes. Tax-free. Period. Right? Just like in Delaware. Delaware has, no sales tax. Do that nationally for books. I think that's a great idea. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.